And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with Dannion Brinkley from the Twilight Brigade. Dannion, when a vet comes back from action, whether it's Afghanistan, Iraq, or wherever, are they put into any special programs back here, or they just mix in with their family and they forget all about them?
George, two things happen. A lot of veterans, a lot of active duty people are drummed out of the military, are given dishonorable or less than honorable discharges because the government just throws them away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? All right, but why I keep pushing this whole health program, this is the most powerful opportunity in health care, George. What is happening in the VA can revolutionize health care. It can revolutionize it. That's why I say if you're a caregiver or you're a veteran or you know one, don't stop till you go and get them to look at these programs. Because watch where we are, George, on this Veterans Day. Where are we? We're sitting at a world war. Well, what does that mean practically today? It means there's going to be a draft, okay? All right? And then how do you fight a war? Anybody that understands fighting a war, it's just one-on-one, then you got to have supplies and you got to have fuel. You have to have ammunition. You have to have a plan, whatever it is, and you execute that plan. Well, then you look at where the fuel comes from. At our present rate, it's $79 a barrel. So all the countries that we're supposedly going to be enemies with, or Israel is an enemy with, is where, since we don't pump oil here, is where our oil is going to come from. So practicality comes into how you fight a war. The only people who made their quota was the Marine Corps. What happened? 70% of all Generation X and the ones under them, the drivers of the millennials, they are not fit to serve. They can't get in. They've had to relax the standards to get people in. And anxiety is driving the generation and the millennials. I mean, that's what's driving them, and then you have to drug them. I mean, this is the reality of every veteran. If you ask any combat veteran or a veteran who understands logistics, they're going to be thinking the exact same thing I'm thinking, okay? And you look at how it's structured. And I'm sorry that I'm cynical about this kind of stuff, George, but when I look at what's going on in Gaza, and I look at dividing the country in half and what's going on, then I look to see what is the overall driving motive in that. Okay, what I get fed every day is one thing, but knowing how you fight, you have to look at all the other things that plays into it.
Right.
And it's a scary, it's a scary point for all of us today.
For everybody.
And if you are a veteran and you see what the VA is doing, who wants to go serve if they don't fix these things and take credit for what they're doing? They're innovating. They're innovating and moving away from the pharmaceutical, that whole routine of drugging people, the whole routine of you got to stop diagnosing and take care of the whole person. And the VA is doing that. I'm proud of that, George. But when they're killing themselves every day and they're sleeping on the street and they have psychiatric problems.
Yeah, that's got to be stopped.
Traumatic brain injury. And everybody in the Generation X and everybody who's draftable age knows these stories. Well, how are you going to incentivize them to come fight? And how are you going to drive the power to wage war, which is exactly where, if we're not smart, it's going to happen. But see, I don't believe it's going to turn out like this, George, because I have watched this for so many years now. Look at this. This was written down in 1977 and went into Saved by the Light. I could see Israel becoming isolated from the rest of the world, and as things got worse, there were images of Israel preparing for war against other countries, including the Russians and a Chinese-Arab consortium. Image after image came of Israel reacting with hatred toward the Palestinians and other Arabs. Okay, now that was in box 5, Strife in the Holy Land, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff in there that came from the visions from the beings of light. I'm calm about this stuff, George. Nobody dies. I mean, you have a certain right and time that you come here. And if you're the difference that the divine makes, then that's the way you have to see yourself as you are in this particular dimensional reality. I was listening earlier about UFOs. Well, I'm probably pretty sure there's people in other planets and other systems, but whether there are dimensional realities and whether there are levels of consciousness that are dimensions close to us and whether they overlap in timelines, I have no question that that's true. Everybody who's ever been dead learns that, not just a near-death experience, but a dead experience. And I've had 2 of those. Okay, I had 3 near-death experiences and 2 death experiences.
That's right.
So by looking at all of those, and I'm sane pretty much, and looking at all those and understanding how it all works, and George, about 10 years ago, when I was listening, I was listening in a session. I can't tell too much about it, but they kept talking about the need for the expansion of the Suez Canal. This is like 11 years ago. And they were talking about it, and they came up with this Ben Gurion Canal, okay? So I didn't think about it. I didn't think about it anymore except maybe 2 years ago because I heard chatter about it. Well, where does it go? If you look at where the map of where the founder of the Israel, Ben Gurion, and you look at where they want to put it, it goes from the South Suez Canal side through northern Palestine or northern West Bank to the sea. And so all of a sudden, when my mind starts to think about this, George, I look at that. I mean, there's a bunch of things that operate within the framework of free will that none of this stuff can possibly be true, or because power of our consciousness and our mind changes. I believe that the world in America is aware that this game to be killing people and slaughtering people like what we're seeing happen in the Ukraine and in the Middle East and all that stuff, to watch that happen makes us in 1920. Okay, this is 2023. This is not rational. None of this is rational.
The whole thing's got to stop. Let's take some calls, Dannion. They're lining up for you. Stan in South Dakota, go ahead.
Oh, good. Thank you, George, and it's a pleasure to meet you, Daniel. And bear with me for a while because the information that I have is quite complicated.
Okay.
And I've been doing research for Senator Rounds' office for about the last 5 years. Lots of research into the brain, traumatic, bad child, the whole. So now just kind of bear with me for a while. I'll get this wrapped up. All right. When men and women go into the military, they're 18, 19, 20, or 21. 22 if they've got a college education. Their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed.
Right.
Now you say, well, what's that got to do with it? Well, because that's where you're rational, and the amygdala is the fight or flight part of the brain, and that gets so tested by stress so often that it becomes larger than it should be, and it starts just automatically taking over. And then after you're out of the service, it doesn't reset. It's been tricked, so to speak, so it's still in that fight or flight mode.
It's still clicked over, right?
Yeah, and so the prefrontal cortex cannot enjoy life like people who don't have damage. They go get an education, a good job, they marry well, they're well respected in the community because they don't have post-traumatic stress. And
they've never been in the military.
Right. Well, or they've never had a bad childhood, right? One of those. So see, here's what happens. Most of the doctors at the VA may know this, they may not know it, but they don't educate the veteran and tell them that they're going to have trouble. And like you said, they just let them kind of float back into society. And it's been proven after every war, crime goes up in America, high. And it's because, in the same way with addiction, if you got 100 addicts in a town, a small Midwest town, 90 of them will be veterans. And it's just that the brain was never, ever created to take this kind of stress. Never.
Agreed.
And see, I've fought it. I'm 76 now. And so it takes a whole lot of holistic. And one of the things is getting your sense of humor back. I used to have a great sense of humor. And then my experiences overseas in the 60s, and that part of the brain, it's beautiful because all of this research that I've done is I'm starting to enjoy life again. I'm starting.
Yeah, curative. This research has been curative.
Good for you.
Thank you. I mean, it's curative for you, but it's also really good for us. Everybody that's listening understands that war is insanity. It's insane. And what it does and the damage it does, you're describing the scientific protocol by what we observe it as, but I deal with the person, the same. And so look at what war is and look at what's happening. Look at where these people who are now in our programs and deploying, look at where their mindset is based on what you just said. And look at what's going to happen. I mean, it's insanity.
It's almost an epidemic, Dannion.
Mm-hmm. But if it was an epidemic, George, it would be planned. Okay, this is the thing that gets anybody who thinks that the news is real is, I can't help that. Okay, I see, if you know me, I see how strategies work, and you can't have so many coincidences. Okay, you just can't have them. So the VA. My whole story is you create a one world government through health care. That I always said, I've said this for 40 years, the battle for the souls of humankind would be fought in health care, and that's why I focus my life in palliative and end-of-life care, because if I was going to make a true difference, I was going to be specific about it and, Marine Corps driven and that kind of way, and I was going to target who I was after and what I was going to do. Now I've got the standard end-of-life care model is in place now. Now it's going to be whole health, which is integrative and complementary therapies, because that's how people get back to normal. Did you hear what he just described? That research that he's doing, George, was curative. Did you hear his heart open?
Oh, my God,
it
yeah.
was curative. I mean, This is what this night is about. And look at the information I got. Look at the understanding what the brain is doing to help people understand PTSD, because I hear their stories.
All the time.
I talk to thousands of these guys, and they all trust me because I won't rat them out or anything, and I can sit and listen. And Tommy knows, and I appreciate Tommy. Tommy knows, how I understand what VAs and how they work, and, he's gone and made rounds with us. And so, if I sit and look at it from where we are, and I look at what this book says, what Secrets of the Light says, which, I have a chapter, box 12 is technology and the virus. And I wrote this down, George, in 1977, and then Paul and I sat down and took all this stuff and made it into boxes, and we lumped things together so that people could get a general understanding of a time period that would happen.
And it's still apropos now. It still is the same.
And today, you can turn on the television and go get a copy of Saved by the Light and turn to chapter 5 and look at whichever box you want to look at and see what I missed. They have accurately predicted where we were going to go, doing the same thing we were doing after the Vietnam era. We did not change our mindset. We became just exactly where we see we are, and the whole story is collapsing around them, okay? And it's just amazing to watch what's happening and to see that we sit at a place now where reality will be determined when this administration goes to San Francisco.
Let's go to Alice.
San Francisco, and whatever that deal is made and ever how that's going to be packaged, that's the game, George. The game will go into play right after that. It'll go.
Alice in Manchester, Tennessee, you're on with Dannion Brinkley. Hi, Alice.
Hello. Thank you, veterans, and I want to thank all the veterans and their families, and thank you, Dannion, for all you do. Thank you, George, for all you do
Thank you.
to make us all feel better. because, we get depressed sometimes, with all the little events.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I love you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I love you because, people don't understand. Like, we all need, that's a caregiver's voice. People don't understand. We need to support each other and care about each other.
Sure do.
And we need to openly and actively do that.
What's your question, Alice?
Well, I don't have a question, but I think it's terrible about these homeless veterans, and I do believe we need to do something to help these people. My husband was a veteran, and I'm a widow now. He's deceased, and so I understand a lot of things about it, about the veterans.
What branch of service was he in?
He was in the Air Force.
Okay, and what year?
What years was he in, Alice? What year was he there?
Engineer. Okay, the Vietnam War. He was in the Vietnam War.
Yeah,
okay, 70s.
A flight engineer. He was a flight engineer.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. God bless. God bless.
I've advocated building homeless cities, Dannion, all around the country, and we got enough space.
And you know what, George? Look, with 3D printing, I was looking at hempcrete. This is concrete and hemp, because hemp absorbs CO2 and it creates it won't burn, and it can be grown. It's just a weed and it can be grown. And so low-cost housing for veterans is a project I have. I have a organization called Carbon Neutral Innovations. And it's looking for ways I'm always there. I'm a veteran junkie, so I'm always focused on veterans and 3D printed low-cost housing for veterans, because at 10% interest rate or 9% interest rate equal to the price you have to pay for that house. So innovation has to come into play so that there's low-cost housing for, say, everybody, but I'm not thinking about everybody. I'm thinking about veterans and their families. Retiring veterans, like places where we are, okay, and then guys coming home that's got a kid and he's done his 4 to 8 years and he's got the VHA loan capability, then he needs a home. Okay, and we have to think very practically. We must think practically to achieve these goals. And I'm pretty practical, Georgie.
Yes, you are. What's your websites, Dannion? Get them out.
Okay, it's lightstreamers.com, and then there's everything about me is right under Lightstreamers. Mel runs that, and he does a great job. And if people will go and look at lightstreamers.com and then go to the Twilight Brigade and look at the resources, the two I talked about, Operation Patriot FOB and Benefits USA. And, George, I'd like to say this, too. I'm at the Star Knowledge Conference. It's a Lakota chief. It's a celebration of a Lakota chief, and this is the Marine Corps birthday. And I'd like to thank Nikki and Elizabeth Wilcox for helping me come here and to celebrate the veterans of the Native Nations people who have served in the military. I got an award with last of the Great Code Talkers.
Good for you. We're going to come back and take final calls with Dannion Brinkley in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie back with Dannion Brinkley, our final segment of calls here. Dannion, when do I run into you again? Any live events coming up for you?
Let's see. I have Conscious Life.
I'll see you then. I'll see you in a couple months there. Perfect.
Yeah, that'll be great. I'll be looking forward to it. But you know something? I was just thinking how much, George, I appreciate you, Tommy, Donna, Stephanie, Lex, everybody that helps me come together to be able to do this show, because I look so forward to it every year. And I'm just so thankful, because it takes a lot of pressure off of me knowing that I got a chance to tell everybody what I'm looking at and what I see and what we can do to focus on veterans.
Well, Tommy was telling me, Dan, a couple of months ago, he said, Veterans Day's coming up. And I said, yeah, I know. He said, it's on a Saturday, and you're not working Saturday. He says, what are we going to do about Dannion? I said, Friday. And here you are.
But it's a Marine Corps birthday. It's a perfect segue.
It timed up perfectly. That's right. Let's go back to the calls. Cornelius is with us in Alexandria, Louisiana. Hello there, Cornelius.
Hey there, George and Dannion. Boy, I love you just like the last two callers. And I know Stan the man. I met him he's one of my coast-to-coast friends. So a shout-out to Stan the man. I hope Mike in Maui, he's our Marine in Maui. We hadn't heard from him in a while, so I hope and pray he's all right. I hope he'll call in on.
Yeah, me too.
And I may
Amen.
call back in. But Dannion, I want to tell you a story about our Alexandria VA because I'm a veteran and stuff. We have a guy named Floyd Hamilton, and his father was a World War II veteran, and we got a doctor over there that's medical malpractice. 9 veterans have died or more by this doctor.
But that's
I wrote a letter to President Obama, and he said they'd do something about it. But they haven't done anything about it. That's why I won't use the VA and stuff. But I'm going to try to get a friend of mine to contact your website. This guy, Floyd Hamilton, his father, he has an article in what they call the Louisiana Voice, Tom Aswell, The Elephant in the Room. It is an excellent article. I hope all the callers and listeners will go to Tom Aswell's website, Louisiana Voice, The Elephant in the Room. Great article about Floyd Hamilton's father, Bronze Star recipient of World War II. And George, I got to salute you and Dannion. Without y'all, a lot of people don't care about vets. And I've been going through some tough stuff, Dannion. Old Satan's been trying to get me to commit suicide, but the Savior said, stand in there. Just stand in the gap. And I want to say one more thing, because Donna told me to keep it short and sweet. My dad was an Air Force vet at England Air Force Base, and he said the Communist Chinese, if we weren't careful, they'd take over. They're already here, Dannion. And you're right about that meeting with President.
10 million of them. You know, 10 million of them came across the border, Cornelius.
And probably more than that.
Okay, but let me tell you something, Cornelius, because this is what George and I do this for. You need to go to the Whole Health Program. Go up on the VA website and go to the Whole Health Program under peer facilitators. And it'll be a place where a group of veterans get together on the call, on the phone, and be able to talk and listen to each other to find balance. Okay? I understand where you are because the failure of the system is why George and I, we do this, why we work so hard to bring it here. So do this for me, Cornelius. Get somebody to go to mail on light streamers, okay, and log in and write to mail, okay, write to mail, and he'll know, and write to him so that I can help facilitate you and this guy to help him get help.
Good point.
We all need it.
Absolutely. Let's go to Blair, Phoenix, Arizona. Blair, you're on with Dannion Brinkley.
Thank you, George and Dannion. I'm a Navy veteran who served in Beirut, Libyan waters, and the Black Sea in 1983.
Wow.
And first of all, thank you, Dannion, for your endorsement last year of a nonprofit 501c3 corporation known as U.S. Vets. Homeless veterans and those that know of such in Maricopa and Yavapai counties, please call or email U.S. Vets. That's all in capital letters. There's an outreach specialist named Alex Alexander who will assist in temporary and subsequent permanent housing, along with help with food, clothing, Veterans Administration paperwork, SNAP benefits, job and drug counseling, you name it. Alex is a Navy vet who worked in the supply department, and he knows how to provide. And, George, if I may give the phone number to U.S. Vets?
Go ahead, sir.
Absolutely.
Area code 602-441-0612. Now, in concern about any future presidential deployment of American troops, Dannion, I'm looking at a Dallas Morning News article dated March 30th, 1988, where President Reagan said he regretted his 1983 decision to station U.S. troops in Lebanon, where over 240 Marines were killed by a suicide truck crashing into their Beirut barracks as they slept. And also JFK's televised announcement taking the blame in April 1961 after the failed Cuban Bay of Pigs invasion. My question to you, sir, is, offhand, can you name any American president besides Reagan and JFK that publicly admitted making a military deployment mistake while in office? Now, Reagan did this in 1988 in March. He was still in office. I'll listen off the air. Thanks again, George, and happy Veterans Day, everybody.
Thank you, Blair. I don't recall anybody else apologizing. Dannion, do you?
Me either, but I'd like to also reinstate the fact that I love U.S. vets, George. I mean, I've watched them. And
I know you do.
Been associated with, well, the U.S. Vet Corporation that we just heard. U.S. Vets, what they do is they go in and find a hotel or a motel in a place, and then they buy it, and then they create these veterans' homes, these places where veterans can come and rehab and work through and still have camaraderie. And it also supports the neighborhood and keeps up the values of the properties so everybody agrees to it and there's harmony, and this is how they design and do it. So I endorse it 100%.
You know what I've been doing lately? I've been going up to vets who wear their hats that say veteran. They talk about Iraq or wherever they serve, but they have it on their cap. And I've been going up to them, thanking them, shaking their hand. And you should see them open up with smiles, Dannion. Yeah. It's amazing.
I mean, to be appreciated, we appreciate us and our parents. We're World War II children. I mean, we know we have this much knowledge of war. Where we are, we have this much knowledge of war, and people need to be appreciated. That's why we do this show.
Let's go to Lori in Modesto, California. Lori, you're on with Dannion Brinkley.
Hello. Yes, I would like to say there are lots of vets who were in military who became disabled and were not given medical. I myself was stationed at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and was learning Morse code and teletype. Because of a fall, I myself became ill and could not get medical at all. The gentleman that's on there with you tonight, I'd like to tell him thank you very much for helping all veterans of any kind, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lori. Go ahead, Dannion.
Yeah, because look, the whole point of it is caring about the veteran now. I mean, that's our point. And looking at what the situation is and looking at what we have to do to correct it. If we're sitting at a war footing, George, which is where we are, we have carrier groups. When people say a carrier group, that's like 37 boats, okay? And if you got two carrier groups and a nuclear submarine, somebody's speaking softly and carrying a big stick, or they're not.
That's right. And they're getting ready for something.
And that's tonight. That's this morning. Okay, so this conversation is about trying to bring awareness to how it affects everybody and why we should support it as we look forward to this election cycle. You can pick a side. It doesn't matter to me what side it is. It's how much pressure you put knowing what you know and knowing it could be, if we go to war, the logistics says there would be a draft. There's no other way around it. I mean, be logical. Look at what's at stake in all of this.
Let's go.
How would you field an army?
That's exactly right. East of the Rockies, Greg in Delaware, you're on. Hi, Greg.
How you doing, George? I'm an insider. I'm retired Air Force with 30 years service.
Thank you for both.
Amen.
Thank you. And Dannion and I are old buddies. He calls me G. We've done a lot together.
Oh, hey, G, man.
Hey, buddy. People don't realize there's so many veterans that are in the hospital with nobody, no family. And I've been there, Dannion's been there, and just to go in, not wait until they're on their deathbed, which Dannion does a great job in helping them pass over, but to just stop in and see them and just talk to them, you don't realize how much that means to the veteran. And I thank Dannion for all that he's done and how he's touched my life and so many other lives. And happy Veterans Day and Semper Fi.
Thank you, Greg. How kind of you. Dannion?
And see, that's what makes this all worth it, George. The veterans feel each other.
Good for you.
There's a thing about Marines. It's like some kind of addiction that we all have for being Marines, but there is a camaraderie that we can find, and just listening to what he was just saying, I mean, this makes it all worth it to me.
Yeah, I got a friend of mine here in St. Louis, and his name's Larry Connors. He's a former television anchorman, ex-Marine, and my God, this guy loves being an ex-Marine. He just loves it. I mean,
it's a camaraderie, though. I mean, I have it. I mean, I have it, and I like the brotherhood that comes with it. And I'm proud of that.
Let's go to Terry in Port Huron, Michigan. Terry, thank you for holding. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Harry, George, and just a question for Dannion. You
Sure,
mentioned
Harry.
the homeless veterans, Dannion. I'd like you to get into more of that. What can we do about it? It sounds like your program is doing something about it. Is there more that can be done?
All you have to do is look. Everybody, all you have to do is call your congressman. You call your congressman local office. You call your congressman local office, and you just ask the question about homeless veterans, and you'd like to know what's going on or how you could participate in it. And why? They have to come home to get reelected. And they have to look at these issues if you make it aware. They are aware of it. I mean, this is that opportunity we all have to make a difference by asking the questions like we covered tonight. Just asking those questions, because then it becomes an issue in a campaign to get reelected. And that's when we have the greatest opportunity and impact on being able to support and care about veterans and their caregivers. That's the focus of this. And that's the place and the point where you go to the government and you ask that question, because they have to answer you back. Don't be afraid. Bring them up. I do it all the time.
Dannion, I hope God gives you another 30 years to do this. What do you think? Huh?
No, George. No way. If I can get 2 more out of this, I'll be so happy I won't know what to do, but
You've gone to the other side 3 times. They keep kicking you back.
Well, I guess I create entertainment value down here or something. I don't know.
Huh.
All I know is this. I believe that I'm living proof that there's a life after death. That's what I believe. And I believe that I've done everything that I could based on I had this thing when it didn't have a name. I had this death experience when it didn't exist. It didn't have a name. And there was no Raymond Moody. There was none of that. I just happened to live 15 miles from Raymond when he was going to medical school. And I became fast friends with him. And I had somebody I could listen to and talk to about something that really happened that was more cosmic than I could possibly imagine.
You're talking about Raymond Moody, of course.
Yeah, and so, this is where I came from in this, and people need to understand that everything they've been told and they think about death as it's been framed for us religiously and ceremonially and all that stuff is just not true, George. It's not true.
All right, my friend, I'll see you at Conscious Life in February. Let's stay in touch. Dannion Brinkley with us. His website's all linked up at coasttocoastam.com. Happy Veterans Day, everyone. Enjoy your day tomorrow, Saturday. And we will be back with open lines. And don't forget our rule. If you call to talk to Dannion, you're allowed to call during open lines. I've changed things because people were saying, I want to talk to the guest. No, I want open lines. I make it easy for you. You can do both.